Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're completely tired of learning stiff, textbook English and you just want to know how native speakers actually converse out in the real world, well, you're in the exact right place. Today, we're tossing out those basic grammar rules and taking a totally different approach. We're going to analyze a short, really engaging story to pull out the natural phrasing, idioms, and vocabulary that'll make your English sound fluent and effortless. Our big goal here? To build a memory palace for you. It's like a vivid mental scene where these words live in their natural habitat, making them literally impossible to forget. Let's get into it.
To kick off our context to concept arc, let's set the scene. Imagine you get invited to a dinner party. The story starts out like this. Last weekend, my friend Sarah invited me to a new restaurant that she claimed had found a perfect niche in the city. The place was famous for serving Mediterranean small plates. Honestly, I had a ton of work to do, but I decided to be a good sport and go out anyway. Notice how effortlessly those target words just blend into the narrative? You're already starting to build your memory palace just by picturing this exact restaurant and that familiar feeling of reluctantly leaving your work behind just to be a good friend. The story continues at the table, and honestly, this is where the language gets incredibly descriptive. Listen to this phrasing. When we arrived, the food smelled amazing and immediately stimulated my appetite. Sarah raised her glass, said cheers, and told me to dig in. Everything was delicious. We ate so much that it felt like we were binging on a professional mukbang video. Hearing classic words like appetite, cheers, and dig in right alongside modern internet slang like binging and mukbang, it just shows you exactly how dynamic spoken English really is.
But, of course, no dinner party is absolutely perfect. The narrator says, Sarah's eating manners were a bit funny. At one point, she dropped her fork, but with her cat-like reflexes, she caught it before it hit the floor. There was a disproportionate amount of food left, so we decided to wrap it up and take the leftovers home as a carryout. Can you literally picture that fork just hovering midair? It's these energetic little scenes that give our brains a strong visual anchor for the phrases. And finally, we wrap up our opening story with a bit of unexpected drama. The only awkward moment was when we saw a guy at the next table who looked completely doped up on medication. Talking to a chair, the waiter politely asked him to back off and leave. Besides that, it was a great night, and her business is definitely going to flourish if she keeps choosing great places like this. And just like that, Sarah's evening was a total success, and we now have this incredibly rich context for our vocabulary.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to deconstruct the story you just heard into 4 clear buckets. 1. Food and dining terms. 2. Common expressions. 3. Descriptive language. And 4. Manners and miscellaneous.
Section 1. Food and dining terms. Mastering restaurant vocabulary.
So, this section is all about that highly practical, everyday language you need when you're eating out. First up is a word that was totally born from the internet but is now fully integrated into daily English, mukbang. It's defined as a video broadcast in which a person eats a massive quantity of food. In our story, the narrator felt like they were literally in one of these videos because of the sheer volume of food Sarah ordered. It just perfectly captures the modern cultural relevance of YouTube food culture. Let's look at how native speakers actually use this in the wild. Listen to this first example. I sometimes watch a mukbang when I'm eating alone. The second one highlights its internet origins. She became famous on YouTube just by doing food mukbangs. If Farsi is your native language, definitely use the translations provided on screen to help bridge that gap instantly. Now let's group 3 incredibly common dining terms together: small plates, carry-out, and leftovers. Think about the chronological flow of our story, right? First, they ordered Mediterranean small plates, which are perfect for sharing. Then, because they ordered way too much, they boxed it up as a carry-out to take home. And the next day, well, those become leftovers that you warm up for lunch. Grouping words by the actual timeline of an event is just a fantastic way to make them stick in your memory. Section 2. Common expressions and phrasal verbs. Sounding like a native speaker. Mastering phrasal verbs is the ultimate secret to shedding that stiff textbook tone and sounding like a real conversational native speaker. Let's break down these 3 positive expressions. To be a good sport means you have a great, accommodating attitude even when you're tired. Just like our narrator who went out despite having a ton of work, which simply means a massive amount. And when the food finally arrives, you don't just say, "Let us commence eating." No way. You say, "Dig in." It implies real eagerness and enthusiasm right at the dinner table. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the word binge. While historically it meant eating or drinking to excess, its modern usage is just so much broader. Today, we binge on almost anything that we consume in massive,
uninterrupted quantities. Most notably, of course, are media and entertainment.
Let's walk through these curated examples. Check out the first one. I'm going to binge on Netflix all weekend. I want you to visualize your own weekend habits right now. Sitting on the couch, autoplay, just firing up the next episode. That is the exact feeling of a binge. The second example, try not to binge on fast food, simply brings it right back to its original dietary meaning. Let's see how this builds by comparing two very action-oriented phrasal verbs side by side. Back off and wrap it up. First, back off is used to create physical or emotional distance. Think of the police ordering a crowd to step back, or that waiter asking the awkward man to leave. Now, contrast that with wrap it up, which means to conclude an event. Sure, you wrap up leftover food in a physical box, but you also wrap up a painfully long meeting when it's finally time to go home. Section 3. Descriptive language. Painting a picture with words. If nouns and verbs are the building blocks of a story, descriptive words are the paint. They add all the color, precision, and emotion, transforming a boring recount into a truly captivating story. Take the word niche. It's defined as a specialized segment of the market or a specific area of interest, and it perfectly describes Sarah's uniquely chosen Mediterranean restaurant. It wasn't just some generic diner. It served a very specific, specialized type of food. If you find your niche, you find the exact, specific thing you are perfectly suited for. So, the crucial point here is really understanding the emotional weight of these descriptive words. Look at the stark contrast. We have flourish, which is this wonderfully positive word used for a business that's growing and succeeding rapidly. Compare that to awkward, which perfectly describes that intensely uncomfortable, heavy feeling in a social situation, like sitting next to someone talking to a literal chair. And appetite, of course, is that deep physical desire for food that gets stimulated by amazing smells.
And this brilliantly illustrates the power of visual idioms, cat-like reflexes. It's defined as extremely fast, agile, and sudden reactions. Revisiting our story's memory palace for a second, remember the funny imagery of Sarah dropping her fork and snatching it right out of thin air? Calling those reflexes cat-like paints an instant picture of agility that everyone, everywhere immediately understands. Here we have two more highly descriptive terms. Now, doped up might sound a bit like street slang, but it's actually often neutrally used in medical contexts. Think about being super groggy after taking dental surgery painkillers, or a vet calming down an aggressive dog. Next up is disproportionate. This is a great, slightly more formal word to describe scale. Think about it. If you order food for 10 people, but there are only 2 of you eating, that is a wildly disproportionate amount of food. Section 4. Manners and miscellaneous. Social graces and pleasantries. These are the vital social interactions and pleasantries that act as the glue holding everyday English conversations together. Notice the really wonderful dual meanings here. First, cheers. You can totally use it formally to toast to happy marriage, raising your glass, but context is absolutely crucial. In London, for example, it's casually used to just say thanks, like, cheers for the ride home, mate. We contrast this with manners. This encompasses specific dining etiquette, like please don't talk with food in your mouth, but also just broad, basic politeness, like simply remembering to say please and thank you. We've explored everything from mukbangs to cat-like reflexes today, and it's all living right inside the memory palace of Sarah's dinner party. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Which of these idioms will you actively use at your very next dinner party to sound just like a native speaker? Don't just study these slides on a screen, take them out into the real world and let your vocabulary truly flourish. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.